Far-right politicians and extremists, will they be the winners at the upcoming European elections? Hello and welcome to this exclusive interview with the Dutch Prime Minister Jan-Peter Balkenende, when we'll be talking about the role of the Netherlands in international affairs and also taking questions from you, the viewer. Jan-Peter Balkenende, welcome to the programme. Let's start then with these upcoming European elections, predictions of record low voter turnout. Why are Europeans so turned off the EU?
Well, if you make a comparison between national elections and European elections, it's clear that people do know many things about what's happening here in The Hague, just to give an example. And what's happening in Strasbourg or Brussels is another story. And
but
that's
it's going
the reason.
down and down and down.
Yeah, but the voter participation always also was lower. At this moment, it's a bit difficult to predict what will happen in a country like the Netherlands. There are predictions saying that it can be somewhere between 35 and 50%. Last time we had 39%. I really hope it will be much more.
Because if it's not, there's a whole question about the legitimacy, isn't there, of these elections?
Yeah, that's the point. It's a bit remarkable because what have we seen during the last years? I think everybody can see that we need Europe to solve the problems of people. When we talk about jobs, when we talk about security issues, when we talk about the issue of climate change, when we talk about a financial crisis, it's very clear that we need Europe.
And yet, that's a message that many European leaders are struggling to communicate to their voters. In fact, here we've got a question from Margaret Witham. She's from England and she says, why are European leaders, including the Dutch government, failing to communicate the necessity of Europe to their voters? And if I may, I'm just going to show you actually the cover of European Affairs magazine. You're actually here with some of your colleagues, Angela Merkel, Nicolas Sarkozy, Berlusconi, and voter apathy will that win the day. And you're not looking too enthusiastic, I have to say, Prime Minister,
well,
about the European project here.
It's very nice to be on such a cartoon. But
it's not, I mean, looking a bit sulky.
Yeah, but I can imagine that it has to do with this issue. Europe votes, well, apathy win. I can imagine the question. What we try to do as Dutch government is to talk constantly about the necessity to be in Europe. As I said, when you compare the situation now of Europe with, let's say, 100 or 200 years ago, it's really fascinating what has changed. We are living in a part of the world with peace during decades. When we talk about the economic well-being and social well-being of people, it's completely different compared to, let's say, the 30s of the last century. And I think we can be very grateful to what politicians has done for Europe. But it is true, when we talk about Europe, we do not talk about the benefits, the advantages. We talk about the negative elements. We talk about bureaucracy.
And this is a very dangerous trend, isn't it? Because low voter turnout will inevitably play into the hands of these extremist parties now that we are seeing on the rise. Also Eurosceptics, who are said to be, you know, the really big winners now at the elections. We've got UKIP, of course, in Great Britain, Vlaams Belang, and all the way down to Slovenia, Romania. And of course here in the Netherlands, the Freedom Party of Geert Wilders, who is also poised for big gains.
Yeah, it's a very strange story to tell. They say we are against the European Parliament. Nonetheless, we will participate in this election. And when we are in the European Parliament, we try to blow it up within the European Parliament. And I think that's not the right story. Because if there is criticism, then you have to talk about it. If you say there are too many administrative burdens coming from Brussels, then you have to talk about it. Also, my government, when we had the presidency of the European Union in 2004, we said, if you talk about bringing down the administrative obligations for entrepreneurs, that's not only a national issue, it's also an international European issue. But then you have to talk about it. And if you talk about bureaucracy or all these issues, you have to attack that. But when you are denying the role of Europe, when you're denying the role of democracy on a European scale, then I think you're giving the wrong message.
And yet, I mean, this negative message about Europe is what is now really catching hold among European voters. And we've got a question here also from one of our listeners in Canada, Eric Verboom. He says, what are you going to do to stop the rise of Geert Wilders and his party in the polls? Does it mean that Geert Wilders has to start dictating the political agenda? And will you, for instance, start implementing stronger policies and laws against criminals?
It's a very good question. And the remarkable thing today is we are talking as far as I can see, too much about Geert Wilders. And the question is not because he is blaming Islam, he's blaming Muslims, he is anti-Europe. But the real question is, what are the answers of Mr. Wilders and the populists? What are their answers?
But you need to come up to answers. You need to. You're the one who needs to strike down his own arguments, which are very seductive.
Yeah, but that's the reason why I am talking about the benefits of Europe. That's the reason why I am talking about the role of Europe when we talk about the conference in Copenhagen about climate change. That's the reason why I talk about the enormous European role in the sphere of the financial issues and economic well-being of people. I really hope that people will also start to think about what are the answers of the populists, because what they are doing is they are exploiting the doubts of people, and then people say, yeah, he's saying it. But the question is, after giving these negative comments, what are the solutions?
Exactly, but I mean, of course, you have to. We're going to come up to. We're going to go on to some of the plans that you have in terms of tackling the recession. But just staying on the subject of Geert Wilders, I know you don't like to talk about it, but this says a lot, doesn't it, about the image of the Netherlands right now? It's what, as when foreign readers of newspapers pick up the newspapers, they see Geert Wilders splattered across headlines. That is what is being talked about in the Netherlands now.
With all respect, but it has also a bit to do with the media. Because the question is, when we talk about the profile of a country like the Netherlands, then I say the Netherlands is a country with a great financial sector. Worldwide, we are the 8th or 9th financial sector. When we talk about investments, export, import, we are one of the major countries in the world. When we talk about the United Nations or IMF, we are really contributing to the activities of those institutions. When we talk about Afghanistan, with our 3D concept, development, diplomacy, and defense. Also the Obama administration, they are making comparable remarks now. We are very active in the sphere of development cooperation. That is the profile of the Netherlands.
That is a profile of the Netherlands.
And I must say, I prefer that profile than, let's say, the profile of the populists.
Well, let's talk then about something else then now, a very Dutch project that you're trying to, I think, bring into the European arena. Yesterday in one of the Dutch newspapers, the NRC Handelsblad, which we have here. Yeah.
You've seen the cartoon?
Yes. And
I'll show it to you.
You prefer the other cartoon? Well, let's compare and contrast.
You had that, that one? Let's see, where is it?
It's on page 7.
No, it's... You have the wrong newspaper.
Oh, we have the wrong newspaper.
We'll
show it later.
We'll show it later.
Okay.
That was a nice one.
But you had a nice cartoon yesterday in the NRC Handelsblad. You talked about the Dutch model, something called the poldermodel, which is a system whereby you get employers, trade unions and the government to talk about job creation, job training, wages, and you want to go European with that. But what really is the benefit of that?
I use the definition of what I call the Rhine-Delta model. And there has been in the past also a discussion about what type of capitalism do we have. And one tradition is what we call the Anglo-Saxon tradition. That is a form of capitalism with an orientation on the short-term profits. What are you doing in the stock markets? But also with a low quality of government and a low quality of social security facilities. The other model...
Which we've got, for instance, in Great Britain.
Exactly.
Which in turn now is very successful.
Yeah. And then you have the other model that has to do with what people call the Rhinelandic model. That has to do with cooperation between employers, employees and the government. It has to do with long-term orientation. Not only talking in terms of profits of your own company, but also what do you contribute to the social and economic well-being. And I think that, and that's also experienced in the Netherlands, it's good that you have these relations, good relations, between the employees' organization, the employee organization, the unions and the government. When we were confronted with the economic difficulties last year, we said there is already an economic slowdown, we will have even a recession. But therefore, we need each other. And I think we should have also such a model on a European scale.
And so now we've got a summit of EU leaders coming up next month. Is that something that you're going to put forward?
Yeah. It's Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany. She made a very good proposal by saying we need a charter for sustainable economic development. And we talk about that concept when we had the G20 meeting in London. And Angela Merkel and I, we've written an article together, and I supporting her with this important issue. It has to do with a new relationship between market and morality. And,
but it has to be concrete, doesn't it? Because the G20 came up with lots of nice conclusions, but was it a little bit soft around the edges?
No, but if you're talking about a new relationship between market and morality, that has to do with the question, what are the rules and supervision for the financial sector? What does the issue of corporate social responsibility mean? These issues are extremely important. And I really hope that we will draw the right conclusions from what happened last year. And therefore it's so important that we are talking about the organization of the economy, and it has to change.
So this will be on the agenda at the
Of
June
course.
summit?
Yeah.
All right. Prime Minister, we're going to end on a completely different note right now. A question from Italy, Lorenzo Carnavello. He says, like many Italians, you have a passion for fast cars, which we all know about. And last week, apparently, you even took part in a rally in Italy, the Mille Miglia?
Mille Miglia, yeah.
So what's the maximum speed you've ever done?
That's not so very high, about 100 kilometers or something like that.
100 kilometers? I'm not sure I believe that.
It's not so very fast. It has to do with the fact the Mille Miglia is a beautiful car race. Okay. It's a historical rally. It's great.
But in general, highest ever speed? When you've got nice big broad roads here in the Netherlands, you can just go for it.
We have a maximum speed. It is 120 kilometers. That's when you're in Germany, it's a bit different.
And on a circuit?
But if you in circuit, I drove an electric car, a Lotus electric car, a beautiful sports car, last Saturday. We had a political meeting with the Christian Democrats, with my party, the CDA. And then I drove that Lotus, and it was above 200 kilometers. Yeah, it's very nice. But I must say, this in a question from Italy. I had a great time in the Mille Miglia. It's fantastic to be there, but also the enthusiasm of the people over there. It was really great. We drove from Brescia and then to Verona, and we went on. It was beautiful. I really enjoyed it.
And you watch Top Gear as well, don't you? This BBC
that's
cars
great
program.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of Top Gear. It's really great.
Oh well, okay. Well, let's hope that the European economy can at least get back to speed quite soon. Thank you so much, Prime Minister, for joining us for this interview. We hope to speak to you again soon, and thank you very much for joining us as well.